Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is Mark,
And this is Mel.
and this is
Therapy Unfiltered. So, in the light of spooky season, we are going to talk about anxiety and the anxious attachment and what it looks like and roll from there.
Wonderful. Yeah. Let's maybe talk a little bit about anxious attachment, what that looks like, how that can feel for someone.
Right.
Kind of like, yeah.
What that might look like in a relationship, our brain, interventions to leave you less anxious.
Yes.
Yeah, so actually, what really got me looking into the anxious attachment and just attachment in itself was actually treating so many people with an anxious attachment style. I was like, what is this? Early on to my career, I was like, it's not just this generalized anxiety that maybe the person is feeling, but there is a particular anxiety when it comes to relationships. And I think in particularly, this has been particularly reinforced because of dating apps and our kind of dating scene now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really difficult, right, to gauge the other person when you're interacting with them through a screen.
Right.
Right. So I think that might be what's exacerbating a lot of people's anxiety.
For sure. And I was also thinking about back a couple decades ago, you might have had less opportunity to meet so many people. And so when I think about the kind of anxious attachment, it's like I can just be easily replaced. So I'm going to work really hard for this person to love me, especially because they could keep swiping and maybe find someone better.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a very complex topic that looking at kind of how technology impacts the way in which people view themselves, but also kind of just the neurobiology of it all, how the anxiety can actually become very addictive.
Right.
There's also an important piece to this to really put some focus on.
Right. So have you ever seen, maybe if you identify with some of these anxious tendencies, right? Like phone checking, or if you get a phone call, he's calling or she's calling, they're calling, you just make this you're super happy. But then that's and right before that call, you were waiting, you were checking, and because
stress hormones
right.
are pumping, and then all of a sudden you get that
huge
whoosh
right.
of dopamine.
Right, kind of a euphoria. All my problems are solved, the relationship's on, they are calling, they want me. So that is definitely a anxious moment, right? Because really reflect on what you were doing before. Were you watching TV, kind of mopey, looking at your phone every second, saying, are they going to call? If they don't call, maybe they don't like me. Yeah. And so that's kind of the addictive.
It's an exhausting cycle that is really hard to break.
Very. There's components to the cycle, right? The intermittent reinforcement.
Yes, intermittent reinforcement. Essentially, kind of think of that little game where there's cups and you get a treat every now and again when you guess the right cup, that you kind of flip that over. So essentially, that's what's happening when in relationship with someone. If you're anxious and you're in relationship with someone avoidant, there's this occasional reward that really gives you that dopamine release that keeps you playing the game.
Right. And so a lot of times what I will hear and belief systems that I will hear within this attachment is love has to be earned. Ooh, so I'm playing this game that's very complex, and I find kind of like the winning cup, right? That's earned. That's the reward. That's the dopamine. Love is now more rewarding.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
seems like you're receiving it. Like you're like, oh, I've got it now. But it's really, it slips through your fingers really quickly because it's more of like the person's giving you this little kernel of hope and attention that pulls you back into the dynamic. And then they go cold, and then you go into that anxiety again.
Right. So it's like, what can I do? What can I do to make this person like me? And so you'll actually be maybe ruminating or obsessively thinking, what can I change about myself? Maybe I see a lot of people sometimes post stories like, oh, if I put this really cool story, maybe they'll notice me. And then you're obsessively checking who's watching your story. And so that's kind of like the short, and then you see that they check your story.
Yeah.
That's the short-term relief. That makes
And
you
know what's
feel so
really
good.
Interesting about that is that you're not only getting the kind of reward of attention, but you're also interacting with this interface that is also kind of setting things off within you. Like it's stimulation. Like there's something getting stimulated when you're seeing the number of likes or like other people's posts.
Right. So I can see that, like, I posted this really cool picture, right? And then a lot of people like it, and then that person in particular that you wanted to like didn't like the picture. Maybe you'll think, well, maybe he didn't like that particular thing in the picture. Maybe he didn't notice enough, so I'm going to post another picture. And just the platform in itself, right? Like
Keeps you hooked.
keeps you hooked. And that actually
really
could be,
tricky.
it is really tricky. And checking their profile, right? You're actually teaching your brain that maybe every time you look at this person's story, they're doing something, but they're not texting you back.
Yeah, so like part of the checking is the trying to get closer to that person because you're feeling the pull away from them. So you're trying to essentially create this connection as you check their whereabouts essentially on social media.
Right.
But it's as you do that, you're reinforcing your anxiety. You're actually making your anxiety worse over time.
Right. And that's where people get a little confused. I feel better in the moment by checking.
The reassurance,
The
relief.
the closeness, we're getting closer. This person's going to love me. But in reality, what you're teaching yourself is to be super hyper vigilant into signs, right? Like, oh, this person did this. Okay, this means that they like me. You're kind of like formulating this huge physics problem in your head about attachment and like how this person shows you how they love you.
Almost like trying to crack the code of
Right.
the person, like figure them out so that
Right.
you get what you want from them.
So what I say this all the time in therapy. It's like more information will actually not make you feel better. And the brain we're problem solvers. We're always trying to, like what you said, crack the code. If maybe sometimes you can crack the code in what you might think is like, if I do this, they'll love me, or if I say this, they'll like me, or maybe if we have the perfect date, they will really admire me. They'll accept me.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it's really when we get sucked into a dynamic like that, we're kind of pulled into fantasy.
Right.
we're not really living our lives. We're living in some alternate like reality.
You might find yourself daydreaming
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot.
And thinking of like the future, like, oh, if I could get them to do this, then they'll do that, then we'll get married, then we'll move in. Like, then, but what's really happening is like you're sitting on your couch and you're daydreaming about this person, but you're not fully connected to yourself.
Hmm.
And so detaching is a really helpful way to come back to yourself.
Right. And you actually might find yourself in two worlds, right? A world that is very daydreamy, euphoric, and then you find yourself in another world that might be very painful and hurting. And there is a lot of biology behind the pain too, that when we don't receive that text message after that reinforcement has been kind of conditioned, right? That like I feel good when I get a message or I get a kind of like a closeness. So then when you don't receive that and your brain is maybe depleted from that reward, it signals our pain regions, right? So the pain, the emotional response in our brain is the same regions of pain. So you actually might feel sick. You might feel in extreme pain when this person doesn't respond. And and what I find people is like how much energy these shifts of daydreaming, we're together, we're gonna go on this lavish date to this is really painful and I'm alone and isolated.
Yeah, that swing from hopefulness to disappointment can be really brutal,
Very brutal.
especially when, and oftentimes when you have a level of anxious attachment, there's been many instances, perhaps in your childhood, where it's communicated, I'm unlovable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just the disappointment in something in the present not fully working out, but it's also like so much hurt and pain from past experiences of like just not really getting your needs met.
Right. And I think the really tricky part of this is that maybe in early childhood experiences or maybe even in your adult experiences that there has been a moment that you've tried really hard and it has worked, which makes this so difficult. Right.
Right. Like when you take care of a parent who might be chronically sick or addicted to a substance, and they finally take you to get ice cream or something.
Right. Or maybe you had an ex-boyfriend and you started really like talking to them in a certain like maybe gentle manner. They got closer to you and you're like, wait, this skill works. But in itself, right, it's great to talk to people gently, but maybe that relationship was the anxious avoidant kind of like cycle, right? So then you're like, then you condition yourself, right? If I just talk like this or we have these perfect dates, then this person will really like me. Yeah. And then you'll find yourself kind of reenacting the same things that you were doing before that your brain told you that worked.
Right. It kept the connection alive and reduced conflict.
Yeah. And so Mark, what were you talking about with the detachment?
Yeah, so essentially, it can be really helpful in these moments where you might feel yourself getting really pulled into this fantasy, this place of fantasy, to essentially focus on yourself and just somatically notice what you're feeling in your body. And oftentimes, when this anxious attachment is triggered, there's a lot in our body that doesn't feel good. So, like, the temptation is maybe to distract or perhaps to stay in our minds and sort of obsess over what just occurred. But what could be helpful is noticing the different sensations in your body, describing the qualities of those sensations. You know, perhaps there's a heaviness in your chest, or there's a lot of movement within your kind of your hands, your feet. Maybe there's like a little shakiness. And then focusing your attention to something more anchored in your body, maybe just like noticing the support of the chair beneath you, maybe placing a hand over your chest, on your heart, on your belly, maybe even like putting a pillow on your chest just to feel the movement there. And what that will do will help slow down your nervous system. And you'll notice probably that the areas of distress in your body will likely also go down.
Yeah.
And the thoughts might slow down too.
Right. And if you have a lot of difficulty, because sometimes when we're really anxious, it's really hard to just be, it's really hard to observe. It's good to just try this for maybe a couple minutes. You don't have to do this for a very long time, but really just trying to ground yourself and observe. I am feeling anxious, and that anxiety is making me feel like I'm going to be abandoned. And you can kind of like label it while you're doing the grounding technique. Or maybe you can't do the grounding technique right now. You're just like, I'm anxious and I'm feeling abandoned. And that's also a micro intervention that you can do that can get you to even stabilize yourself even better. But sending more texts, trying to problem solve with that individual, like, why don't you love me? Why didn't you check in?
Yeah.
Is just going to make your anxiety worse long term.
Don't go to the person who harmed you for repair.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Go
Yes.
to someone that you feel really safe and secure with.
Right. And also, when you're in those moments of pain or extreme anxiety that you feel abandoned, posting on social media is not going to be helpful, because you're going to engage in that checking behavior, which then is going to reinforce your anxiety even more. It's really hard, right? Like, I'm telling you to basically ground yourself in moments that you want to flee.
Right. I mean, it's a really challenging thing that takes so much time. And so don't depending on where you are in your sort of your emotional psychological processing, try to set reasonable goals for yourself. Like, if you've never meditated before, well, perhaps just like a couple seconds noticing a feeling inside is enough. You don't want to overdo it too quickly.
Right. And so those are all great strategies when you find yourself in those anxious moments. But Mark, I actually think it would be really important that we talk about why people engage in several of these relationships one after another.
The looping?
Right. So we talked a lot about the looping of the thoughts, right? But like, I also find that people might get into these relationships again and again and again, or maybe situationships with the people with the same traits of this coldness that they're not really reciprocating.
Well, it's just a continuation of what we're trying to resolve inside. And so what I mean by that is that if we've had ruptures, usually with our primary caregivers or our parents, those ruptures are patterned. So there's certain behaviors that occur, and then we just kind of try to find that exact pattern again or similar patterns in all our other relationships. And then when a relationship ends, there's all this anxiety around like, I feel alone. Uh, I might feel bored. I might feel sad. And so if, we haven't had enough time to really process those difficult emotions, we likely will just go chasing after that next person to sort of distract.
Right.
And to try to get a different result the next time. Like, there's always this hope inside that, like, this is going to be the one where I'm going to actually get through to them.
And that's what drives people. Mm-hmm. The hope, the reward seeking, and what you were saying about the unprocessed emotions, right? The unprocessed conflict. When we have unresolved challenges in our kind of like past, or the brain and our body really tries its best to try to resolve it. So maybe in the past you had this caregiver that wasn't very attuned to you or was unpredictable. You will relive these experiences now, maybe dating at 25, 30, 33. You're on these dates, and really these things that happened so long ago are trying to resolve on that date right then, right? It's like, oh, here it is, right? It's not conscious. These things are not very conscious.
We're not actually thinking
Yeah,
it.
we're not like, my mother wasn't very attuned, so I am now finding someone. No, it's not like that. It's unconsciously these processes happen, and that's why you might feel so compelled to this person, right? Like, and it's actually, if the more that you ground yourself on this date, on these experiences, the more you'll actually notice you might not be aligned with this person. And so the more that you see who the person is actually offering you, and you're describing the moment after mindfully, you'll notice like, okay, this is what I know about this person. And I'm getting to know them. Instead of like creating that.
Yeah. And you know what this is bringing up for me? Over accommodating.
Yes. Over accommodation.
And how we're like, essentially we're trying to match the other person. We're trying to like fit within this like little zone that they've set up in their own systems, so that we get the acceptance we're looking for.
Right. And that is so rewarding to get that acceptance. Think of like you running a marathon, and you're like with this person, and you finish the marathon, they are like, I love you, or like, I want to give you a relationship. And you're like, I over accommodated, I was perfect on these dates, that's why they gave me that. And so really like reflect on your belief system. Look at what you just taught yourself, right? When I forget who I am, when I over accommodate, people can love me. And so even if you end up with that person, really reflect what you're teaching yourself long term, because you might have that relationship but still might be anxious. And so, because there are continual things that might happen in a relationship, and you still have the commitment that might be reinforced, and you might have that generalized anxiety.
And a lot of the anxiety is like about how you're not really being truthful to yourself. So you're like constantly scanning the other person to try to fit yourself into whatever box they have that pleases them. And there's all this fear of like, what if I don't fall within the lines? Like, what then? Do I lose the connection? Right. So that's like it's a really kind of complicated web to kind of try to organize within yourself. Like, that takes a lot of time, but I would suggest really focusing on, okay, like what in this interaction, what in this relationship is within my control, and what's kind of within their responsibility. And try to notice when you're getting pulled into this like over accommodation, this kind of like just defaulting to whatever they want.
Right. And these things over time, chronically, can even spill into your work, can spill into your friends, your relationships with your friends, these belief systems that you have kind of created or
and reinforced
and
by other
shaped,
people,
yeah.
right? That sort of the being at work, a lot of times
Right.
people with anxious attachment, they're like really high performers.
Did I do it okay? Like
Yeah.
they're checking too.
Yeah.
The checking
and they
behavior.
want to do a really good job. And then they get their reinforcement from maybe their boss, maybe their employer or something, and they get a bonus, they get like an awesome review. It reinforces this kind of like hypervigilance.
Right. And I think another good topic here too is like, how can you, because I hear this a lot. Like, I went on this date, they had all the same values that I wanted, but I didn't feel that feeling. And
The spark?
the spark, right? And the butterflies. Butterflies are anxieties. That's that's your body reacting to that's anxiety essentially.
It's
So
something that's uncertain.
right, right. And so you really need to start practicing. I encourage you to practice these mindfulness techniques, because then you're going to go on this date or these experiences, and you're not going to be looking for an excitement in your nerves.
Absolutely.
And then what that gets coded as excitement and nerves equals high reward. So then that is, that's a good relationship to seek, or that's a good person to maybe convince that you want to date, or I should like that person because it's high reward.
Yeah. I think there's like a control element to it, where when we're feeling anxious, just in general in life, there's a tendency to respond to that anxiety. And the anxiety is around the ambiguity within life,
Right.
to control, which then just reinforces the anxiety.
Yeah.
Ironically. So that, that's like, obviously that happens within relationships all the time, because romantic relationships are some of the most complex, and there's so much that is on the line. There's so much risk. And of course, there's going to be so much anxiety,
Right.
which then leads that person to try to control the other. So a lot of times, if you're experiencing the anxiety and like, oh, what is he doing or what is she doing? And like, does she still love me? Whatever. There's this tendency of like, but they're making me feel this way. Like, if they just responded to my message, I wouldn't feel this way. What you're doing is you're giving all your power away.
Yep.
You're saying that, I need to control this person's behavior so that I feel okay inside.
And that's detrimental to your self-esteem.
Absolutely. Yeah. It erodes it.
It erodes it. Because you're saying, I can only make myself feel joyful when that person responds to me, and I am nothing. Essentially somewhere around that realm. So, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So a lot of talk about anxiety and relationships
Are
in
we
this
feeling
spooky.
anxious right now?
I mean, I just talked about a lot, but like spooky season, that just was some spooky stuff.
Oh
so
my God, tell me about it.
we hope that we gave you some interventions, some stuff that you can do at home, or even things to reflect on for you to make these changes that might be better better suited for you, beneficial, create maybe a relief. Yeah,
Yeah, this was so much fun.
so much fun. Stay tuned for next pod. We will be ending the attachment series and going into a new topic. Stay tuned.
See you guys soon.